All right, let's dive in. Today we're exploring Tiago Forte's building a second brain. This idea of a second brain has really captured my attention, especially now when it seems impossible to escape information overload.
It is a widespread struggle, isn't it? We're constantly bombarded with information, but retaining and actually using it effectively, well, that's a whole other challenge.
Forte really emphasizes this point with a striking statistic. He says that knowledge workers spend an entire day each week just searching for information.
And often they don't even find what they're looking for. It's a pretty disheartening thought. I'm sure most of us have experienced that frustration of knowing we've come across something before, but just can't recall it when we need it. That's where this concept of a second brain comes in.
So when Forte talks about a second brain, he's not talking about some kind of futuristic implant or AI takeover, is he?
Not at all. It's more of a methodology, a system for harnessing and leveraging the knowledge we consider valuable. He actually refers to it as a bicycle for the mind, a tool that enhances our thinking, not something that replaces it.
I love that analogy. It definitely makes the concept seem more approachable. I've also heard other terms floating around for this type of personal knowledge management, like Settlepaston and digital garden.
It is interesting how these terms, while having their nuances, all point towards a shared need to take control of the information we're constantly taking in. They represent a shift from just passively consuming information to actively engaging with the knowledge we come across.
What I found particularly compelling was Forte's personal story. He didn't develop this system as some sort of tech genius. It came out of a very real personal need.
Exactly. He was dealing with a chronic condition which led him to meticulously document his entire medical journey. The sheer volume of information forced him to find a better way to manage it all.
And that's where the real aha moment happened, right?
Yeah.
He realized that his notes weren't just for record keeping, they were a powerful tool for uncovering patterns and gaining deeper insights.
It became about truly understanding the information, not just remembering it. And his system evolved beyond his medical needs to encompass all areas of his life.
He even applied these principles during his time in the Peace Corps and later in Silicon Valley. Talk about contrasting environments.
It really speaks to the adaptability of his system. He was able to thrive in situations that might have overwhelmed others. It underscores the idea that a second brain is a flexible structure, not a set of rigid rules.
So let's get into the core of Forte's system. The code method: capture, organize, distill, and express. It seems pretty straightforward at first glance.
Oh, there's definitely a lot more to it than meets the eye. Each step builds upon the last, creating a streamlined process for not only storing, but actively using our knowledge. The real beauty of it is its versatility. It can be applied across various platforms and tools.
Let's start with capture. It might seem obvious, but Forte emphasizes the importance of being intentional about what we choose to save. He even uses Taylor Swift as an example.
Even superstars need systems, right? Forte points out that Taylor Swift meticulously captures every single lyric or melody that pops into her head. She understands that inspiration can strike at any moment, and she's always prepared.
It's a good reminder that capturing goes beyond just articles or research. It's about preserving those flashes of inspiration, those random thoughts that could potentially turn into something amazing down the line.
And to help us navigate this influx of information, he introduces the four capture criteria. Is it inspiring, useful, personal, or surprising? It's a fantastic filter for separating the signal from the noise.
Okay, so let's say we've built up this collection of notes, ideas, and inspiration. Now what? That's where we move to step 2, organize. If I'm not mistaken, this is where Forte introduces his PRA system.
You are absolutely correct. PRA stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archives. It's a pretty innovative approach to organization that prioritizes actionability over traditional subject categorization.
This is where it starts to get really interesting. Instead of organizing by topic like we do with traditional folders, PRA encourages us to think about how we'll actually UE the information. It's all about context.
Think about your own work or personal life. We all have ongoing projects, areas of responsibility, resources we use, and archives of past endeavors. PRA aligns directly with this natural structure, making our notes easily accessible when and where we need them.
So for example, if I'm working on redesigning my website, all my notes related to design inspiration, functionality, or even client feedback would go into my website redesign project folder.
Exactly. And the brilliance of PRA is its fluidity. Information can move between categories as our needs change. A note I initially captured for a specific project might later become a valuable resource for future endeavors. It's a dynamic and adaptable system.
This leads us perfectly to step 3,
Oh,
distill. With a well-organized system, the process of refining and summarizing our notes becomes much more efficient, wouldn't you say?
absolutely. Distillation is all about transforming those raw notes into concentrated nuggets of wisdom. Forte compares it to layers of highlighting, progressively honing the information down to its essence.
He also draws an analogy to Picasso's bowl, where the artist progressively simplified the image, removing everything non-essential until only the fundamental form remained.
It's a powerful visual representation of distillation. It's about cutting through the clutter to reveal the core message, making our notes concise and impactful so our future selves can instantly grasp their meaning.
Which brings us to the final step, express. This is where we take all that captured, organized, and distilled knowledge and turn it into something tangible, something real.
This is where the true magic happens. It's not about hoarding notes, but leveraging them to create, to contribute, to make an impact.
Forte introduces the concept of intermediate packets here. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Imagine intermediate packets as reusable modules of work. They could be anything from a well-crafted paragraph to a presentation to a full-blown proposal. The key is that they're self-contained units of knowledge that can be easily assembled and reassembled for different purposes.
Forte gives some great examples in the book, like the pastor who uses intermediate packets to craft moving memorial services by drawing upon a collection of stories and themes. And then there's Forte's own home office remodel, where he used a similar approach to manage the overwhelming amount of information involved.
These examples really highlight the transformative power of intermediate packets. They allow us to break down complex tasks into manageable units, to work iteratively, and to leverage past efforts for future endeavors.
So now let's shift gears to the practical side of things. How do we maintain this second brain amidst the chaos of everyday life? Forte emphasizes mise en place, a term he borrows from the culinary world.
Exactly. Just as a chef meticulously prepares ingredients and tools before cooking, we need to set up our second brain for smooth execution.
This involves regularly reviewing our notes, right? Forte talks about both weekly and monthly review processes.
Yes, these reviews are crucial for maintaining a healthy information flow. It's about revisiting our notes, refining our organization, and making sure our system aligns with our current goals and priorities.
And even just a few minutes dedicated to these reviews can make a big difference. It's about consistency, not necessarily huge chunks of time.
You're absolutely right. Building a second brain isn't about adding another burden to our already busy schedules. It's about seamlessly integrating these practices into our existing routines. So we've covered the theoretical foundations of building a second brain, but now I'm sure you're wondering how to actually put these concepts into practice.
Exactly. I'm feeling inspired, but I could definitely use some guidance on bringing this to life. Like, what tools do I actually use?
Well, the first thing to remember is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to building a second brain. The key is finding tools and techniques that resonate with you personally and fit seamlessly into your workflow. It's about customization.
Speaking of tools, what are some popular options for creating this digital second brain? I know Forte is a big proponent of digital note-taking apps.
You're right, note-taking apps provide a really solid foundation. They're flexible enough to handle all sorts of content, from text and images to audio recordings. Plus, with their powerful search capabilities, finding information later on is a breeze.
I've actually played around with a few note-taking apps myself. Does Forte mention any specific ones in the book?
He does, actually. He brings up Evernote, Notion, and Obsidian, just to name a few. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses, so it really comes down to personal preference and how you envision using your second brain.
I've heard of Evernote. It's known for being a pretty comprehensive note-taking app.
Yeah, it's been around for a while and has a really wide range of features. It's a great choice for people who value simplicity and user-friendliness. Notion, on the other hand, is a bit newer to the scene, but it's gained a lot of traction recently.
I see Notion mentioned everywhere. What makes it stand out?
Well, Notion's main selling point is its versatility. It's more than just a note-taking app. You can manage tasks, create databases, even build entire websites with it. It's perfect for people who want a really customizable and interconnected system.
Sounds impressive, but maybe a little intimidating. Is there a steep learning curve with Notion?
There can be. Notion's flexibility is both a blessing and a curse. It's incredibly powerful, but you have to put in the effort to set it up and customize it to your liking. If you're tech savvy and enjoy tinkering with systems, you'll probably love Notion. But if you prefer a more streamlined experience, Evernote might be a better fit.
And what about Obsidian? I'm not as familiar with that one.
Obsidian is pretty unique. It's built on a system of interconnected notes, similar to that Zettelkasten method we talked about earlier. It's a visual thinker's dream. If you like seeing how ideas connect, you'll love Obsidian.
So choosing a note-taking app really depends on your individual needs, how you work, and how complex you want your system to be.
You got it. And don't feel like you have to commit to just one app right away. Play around, experiment, see what feels intuitive and enjoyable for you.
Okay, so let's say we've chosen our note-taking app. What other tools might be helpful for building a second brain? I remember Forte mentioning something called capture tools.
Right. Capture tools are essential for gathering information from all sorts of sources and funneling it into our second brain.
That's where things like browser extensions or read it later apps come in. I use Pocket all the time to save articles I want to read later.
Pocket's a great example of a Read It Later app. You can save articles, videos, even entire web pages to access offline. It's really handy.
And then there are browser extensions. Those are so useful for capturing snippets of text or images without having to leave the page you're on.
Yeah, there are tons of excellent browser extensions out there. Some popular ones include Evernote Web Clipper, which integrates seamlessly with Evernote, and Readwise, which syncs highlights from your ebooks and articles right into your note-taking app.
It's amazing how much these tools streamline the capture process. It makes building a second brain so much more manageable.
Absolutely. The goal is to minimize friction and make it effortless to capture anything that resonates with you. The more you capture, the richer your second brain becomes and the more value you can extract from it.
Okay, so we have our note-taking app, we have our capture tools, we're diligently capturing and organizing information. But I have to admit, I'm starting to feel a bit overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information that could potentially build up over time. How do we avoid getting lost in our own digital jungle?
That's a valid concern. As our second brain expands, good maintenance habits become really important. And this is where Forte's emphasis on regular reviews comes in.
He talks about both weekly and monthly reviews, if I remember correctly. Can you walk us through what those entail?
Sure, the weekly review, as the name suggests, is a dedicated time each week to tidy up your second brain. It involves going through your notes inbox, giving them meaningful titles, and filing them into the appropriate PRA category.
So it's not about deep diving into the content at this point, just making sure everything is categorized and searchable.
Precisely. It's about maintaining that smooth flow of information and preventing things from getting stagnant. Then there's the monthly review, which is a bit more comprehensive.
What does the monthly review involve?
It's more of a holistic assessment of your second brain. You'll want to revisit your project folders, see how things are progressing, and identify any course corrections you need to make. You might also spend some time exploring your resource notes, looking for connections or insights that you might have missed before.
So the monthly review is a chance to step back, reflect, and ensure that our second brain is still aligned with our goals and priorities.
And it's also a great time to do some pruning. As our information intake grows, some of it inevitably becomes outdated or irrelevant. The monthly review gives us a chance to declutter, archive notes that are no longer serving us, and create space for fresh insights.
This whole review and pruning process seems crucial for preventing our second brain from becoming a digital dumping ground. But to be honest, it also sounds a bit tedious. Are there any tips for making these reviews more engaging?
You're not wrong. It can feel like a chore if you approach it the wrong way. Forte actually addresses this in the book. He suggests approaching these reviews with a sense of curiosity and playfulness rather than viewing them as just another task on your to-do list.
Any specific strategies for cultivating that mindset?
Well, one thing you could try is incorporating your reviews into your existing routines. Maybe do a quick weekly review while you're having your morning coffee or during your commute. The key is to find a time and place that feels natural and enjoyable, not forced or stressful.
For the monthly review, maybe we could treat ourselves to a relaxing afternoon at a coffee shop or park, spending an hour or two tending to our digital garden.
Exactly. The monthly review can be a wonderful opportunity for reflection and creative exploration. It's a chance to reconnect with your notes, rediscover forgotten gems, and spark new ideas.
I imagine as your second brain becomes more robust and well-maintained, the review and pruning process actually becomes more enjoyable. It's like tending to a thriving garden instead of a neglected one.
That's a great analogy. And as you refine your capture, organization, and distillation skills, the review process shifts from sifting through clutter to curating a collection of valuable insights.
This whole concept of a second brain is really starting to click for me. It feels like such a liberating way to manage information overload without feeling overwhelmed. almost like building an external extension of your mind, a trusted repository for knowledge and inspiration.
You've articulated it beautifully, and it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination. Building a second brain is an ongoing process of experimentation, refinement, and self-discovery.
It's about finding what worked for you, adapting tools and techniques to your individual needs and preferences, and embracing the iterative nature of it all, knowing that your second brain will continue to evolve alongside your learning and growth.
You're absolutely right. It's a lifelong endeavor, but one that offers incredible rewards if approached with curiosity, intentionality, and a willingness to embrace the power of externalized thinking.
As we delve deeper into this idea of building a second brain, I was trying to see how it goes beyond just productivity. It seems like it can actually unlock creativity as well.
Absolutely, and that's a key point that Tiago Forte really drives home. His approach reframes our whole understanding of creativity. He argues that it's not some mystical talent reserved for a chosen few, but a process that we can all cultivate through intentional knowledge management.
He talks about this concept of divergence and convergence, right? Can you break that down for us?
Of course. Divergence is all about expanding our horizons, exploring a wide range of possibilities, gathering inspiration from different sources. Think brainstorming, mind mapping, or just immersing yourself in a new subject.
So basically opening ourselves up to a whole spectrum of ideas without judgment or filtering.
Exactly. And then we have convergence, which is where we start to synthesize those diverse ideas, shaping them into something concrete and meaningful.
It's where we make decisions, prioritize, and refine our thinking, moving from that initial exploration phase to focused creation.
Forte uses a really great analogy here. He compares it to sculpting. Divergence is like gathering a huge block of clay full of potential but undefined. Convergence is the process of chiseling away at that clay, revealing the form within.
That's a really vivid image, and it emphasizes the importance of both phases. Divergence provides the raw material, and convergence shapes it into something with purpose.
Precisely. And this cycle of divergence and convergence can be applied to any creative endeavor, whether you're writing a blog post, designing a product, or planning a marketing campaign.
Forte also offers some really practical techniques for navigating this creative process. I know he talks about the archipelago of ideas, for instance.
Ah, yes, the archipelago of ideas. It's a brilliant approach to outlining. Instead of starting with a blank page, which can be incredibly daunting, we begin with clusters of ideas, like islands scattered across a sea of possibilities, and then, gradually, we start building bridges between those islands, creating a coherent structure.
So we're working with these pre-existing building blocks, weaving them together, instead of staring at that intimidating blank slate.
Exactly. It makes tackling large, complex projects much less overwhelming. And it aligns perfectly with Forte's emphasis on those intermediate packets we discussed earlier.
Those reusable chunks of knowledge that we can assemble and reassemble for different purposes.
The very same. The
Mhm.
archipelago of ideas helps us identify those intermediate packets and figure out how to arrange them strategically to build a compelling narrative or framework.
It's like constructing something amazing with a box of Legos.
I like that analogy. And while we're on the topic of building, Forte also stresses the importance of constraints in creative projects. He introduces this technique called dialing down the scope.
I'm curious about that. What is dialing down the scope all about?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we often have these grand, ambitious goals for our projects, which is great, but sometimes those ambitions can actually become paralyzing. Dialing down the scope is about strategically reducing the complexity of a project without sacrificing its core essence.
Finding that sweet spot between what we aspire to achieve and what's actually feasible.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that we don't have to do everything at once. We can start with a smaller, more manageable version and iterate from there, expanding and refining as we go.
That reminds me a lot of the Agile methodology, where the focus is on delivering value incrementally, rather than striving for perfection from the outset.
You're spot on. Dialing down the scope is a really powerful way to combat procrastination and perfectionism. It allows us to just get started, gain momentum, and learn by doing.
So as I'm listening, I'm seeing how all these concepts, divergence and convergence, the archipelago of ideas, intermediate packets, dialing down the scope, they all weave together to create a robust framework for creative expression.
It is a cohesive framework, and what's great about it is that it's grounded in practicality. These aren't just abstract theories, they're actionable techniques that we can readily apply in our own lives.
And of course, Forte doesn't stop there. He also emphasizes the importance of seeking feedback. It's not about creating in isolation, but sharing our work. and getting input from others.
Absolutely. Feedback is crucial for refining our ideas, identifying blind spots, and ensuring that our work resonates with our intended audience.
With a second brain, we have a ready-made portfolio at our fingertips to share with others. It's like a digital showcase for our ideas and insights.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads us to the ultimate purpose of building a second brain self-expression. It's about taking everything we've captured, organized, distilled, and refined, and using it to share our unique perspectives with the world.
It completes the circle. It's not just about personal productivity, but about making a meaningful contribution, leaving our mark.
Exactly. And Forte reminds us that this doesn't have to be some grand sweeping gesture. It could be as simple as sharing a helpful tip, writing a blog post, or having a thoughtful conversation.
It's recognizing that we all possess valuable knowledge, and that sharing those insights can have a ripple effect, enriching the lives of others.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment to end on. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left feeling incredibly optimistic and empowered. Building a second brain isn't just about organization. It's about unlocking our creative potential and embracing the power of self-expression.
It's about recognizing that creativity is within each of us, and using the tools at our disposal to bring those visions to life. So if you're feeling inspired, take action. Start small, experiment, and enjoy the journey. The world is ready to hear your voice.
Before we say goodbye, let's quickly recap the 10 key takeaways from our deep dive into Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain.
Great idea. Little cheat sheet for our listeners to take with them.
Number 1, combat information overload. Remember, knowledge workers waste an entire day each week just searching for information. A second brain helps us manage this deluge.
Number 2, enhance your thinking. A second brain acts as a bicycle for the mind, augmenting our cognitive abilities, not replacing them.
Number 3, shift from passive to active. It's about moving beyond just consuming information to actively engaging with it and using it.
Number 4, capture intentionally. Be deliberate about what you save using the criteria: inspiring, useful, personal, or surprising.
Number 5, organize actionably. The PRA system projects, areas, resources, and archives focuses on how we'll use the information rather than traditional categories.
Number 6, distill for clarity. Refine and summarize your notes to their essence, making them easily digestible for your future self.
Number 7, express through creation. Leverage all that captured and organized knowledge to produce tangible outputs and make a real-world impact.
Number 8, embrace intermediate packets. Utilize those reusable modules of work for different purposes, allowing you to create efficiently and iteratively.
Number 9, maintain regularly. Implement those weekly and monthly reviews to keep your system fresh, organized, and free from clutter.
And finally, number 10, unlock creativity. Employ techniques like divergence and convergence, the archipelago of ideas, and dialing down the scope to boost your creative output.
There you have it, folks. 10 powerful takeaways to help you on your journey to building your own second brain.
And until next time, keep learning and keep creating.